Hi, I'm Yamaya, and this is Decipher, and these are our lovely panelists. Decipher means to succeed in understanding, interpreting, or identifying the meaning of something. To break down the meaning of decipher further, cipher also denotes a mathematical number of 0, this being a semicircle, and you, the audience, completing the circle will facilitate the conversation. Today's topic is around identity, African versus Caribbean versus British. So I'd like to ask anybody to maybe describe or define what identity means.
So to me, identity sort of encompasses the characteristics which you use to define yourself. That's how I look at it. What about you, King Woods?
Well, I think identity is like, if I break it down into 3 parts. Firstly, it comes from your history, your culture, and then the way that you're able to express your culture in everyday life. And when you put them together, that makes your history.
Or identity.
Well, yeah, that makes your identity.
How do you think identity interplays with culture? How is culture defined in that context?
For me, you can derive your identity, who you are, from your culture and your background. So culture plays a big part of maybe how you see yourself, how you behave as a person. So yeah, culture plays a big part in identity.
Yeah, for us growing up in the UK, we would consider ourselves to be part of the diaspora from different parts of two of you from the continent, the rest of us from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And I would say, do you think that the tensions between Africans and the Caribbeans still exist today?
Personally, growing up in the UK, I didn't experience any tensions at all, but I grew up in the north of the UK. So there wasn't a lot of Caribbean or African people there anyway. And then when I would move into spaces where there were more African and Caribbeans, it excited me, it made me happy. It was a difference. So I was happy. Like, I never experienced any tensions, but that's just me. I don't know.
I would say it still exists today. Because when I deal with, like, I'm Caribbean myself, but I will say, like, I'm African. And then, like, me being from the Caribbean saying that's one thing, but see if I go to an African person who is from the continent now, the motherland directly, I'll say to him, I'm African. He'll be like, no, you're not. I'm saying, what do you mean? No, I'm not from Africa. You say, I'm from Africa. My ancestors came. How did we get to the Caribbean? He's like, nah, but you guys are different. And it's like, there's that divide, whereas just because they are directly linked and they can see that link, they try to make out as if like I'm not, because I can't like reclaim where my ancestors originally were from.
But how does that make you feel though? Because I've experienced that too. And how does that make you feel when somebody makes that comment from the continent makes that comment?
That don't make me feel good, because like we're trying our best. Well, it's 50-50 because I'm speaking from one side of the Caribbean. There are also other Caribbeans that are like, no, we're not from Africa.
We'll get to that.
So I can't just say they have no reason for it. But at the same time, it's like we're trying to unify what's been divided. And it's like, you're there trying to throw it in my face. So it's like, why would I want to unify with you guys if you're trying to distance yourselves from us?
It's funny because I think when I was younger, I saw the divide a lot more. Especially like from my grandparents' generation, there was anti-African, and the Africans were equally anti-Caribbean, particularly in my grandparents' generation, not so much in my parents' generation. And when I went to university, again, it was we all together, we all loved each other, but we'd still bring that kind of upbringing and cuss each other. So we have that Jamu, cussing the Jamus, and then you have the Ghanaians fighting over who Jollof rice is better than Nigerians or the Ghanaians, and then they'll say something about Jamaicans, Jamaicans say something about them. But it was all banter. It wasn't serious conflicts. And then I feel like as our generation has continued to grow together, we've grown up together now, because initially just Caribbeans come to the UK and then Africans came, and now it's just like everybody's growing up together at the same time. We're a lot more unified in that sense. I've seen a huge improvement in that area. We're marrying each other now. We've got jerk and jollof in one plate. And do you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm seeing all of those positive improvements.
Yeah.
However, the reason this is a topic today is because I was part of a WhatsApp group conversation, which was quite heated because we had the Africans who still had these strong stereotypes about Jamaicans. And then we had Jamaicans who were like, I'm African, I'm proud to be Jamaican, I'm very proud of this part of my identity. You Hotep people want to claim Africa like it's some superior, something, you know, and it's just like, so then there's this new dynamic now forming. It's not about us and them, it's more about why do you feel the need to reclaim Africa when your Jamaican heritage is so rich? You Jamaicans are not part of us, and you know, and all the stereotypes that we have about them, they have about us, still exist to a degree as well.
I just want to pick up on one of the points you mentioned there. When they say our Jamaican heritage is so rich, which part? Because we're going to talk about how long have we been in Jamaica. And we're not talking about indigenous, because there was indigenous before, but it wasn't called Jamaica then. So when we talk about Jamaica, the little independence we did receive from then till now, against the centuries and the dynasties of ancient Africa, not just Kemet, but ancient Africa itself, Ethiopia, never being conquered. We got Timbuktu, we got Mali. Hey, you're going mad. That's all I can say. You're going mad. Like Garvey said it the best, innit? Only a fool would give up a continent, the most mineral-rich continent, for an island, for that little island. Not me. I'm not into that.
I hear you, and I get that point, and that is my premise as well. But I also understand where the person was coming from when they said that, in terms of, as people who were kidnapped and put onto this island, we struggled to recreate ourselves.
We did.
And what we have created is, from a small island, so influential, worldwide influence. And we've got our patois, we've got our food, we've got our music, we've got all these things that I think are still so beautiful that we shouldn't throw away either. So I get that, and I feel like there are lots of things to be proud about and a lot of things to be ashamed about, I'm gonna lie, in terms of some of the things, aspects of Jamaican culture, which is where a lot of the stereotypes come from. So I get when people have that argument, and I feel like what you mentioned about the Mali Empire and all the great, long historical things that Africa's contributed to the world, it's because they don't know. And a lot of people don't know. And even if they do know, they don't feel connected to it because we get that separation. That separation still exists.
That makes sense, though.
For me, sorry, I think everyone's Africanness, for lack of a better word, comes innately. So when we talk about cultures in the diaspora creating something for themselves, it's innately African. So patois is a broken English, but it's an African version coming out of the slavery times and etc. The food as well. These things are connected. The language, the food, the music, all have its roots in Africa, but just broken and distorted because of history and conflict and etc. So when we talk about, for example, the kissing of the teeth, it's something so
Universal.
small, but it's universal. Yeah. Every culture does it.
Well, every black culture does it.
Yeah, every black culture does it. African Americans I've seen do it. Different Caribbean islands. Black people from the UK, born in the UK, and maybe have that African influence or Jamaican influence wherever they are, but it's natural to them because I feel like Africanness doesn't just come from the continent, but within us naturally.
Like planting, love of planting.
Exactly.
Like everybody everywhere loves planting.
Loves planting because there's something inside of you telling you that's it, and that's what's truly African, if that makes sense. So it comes from within, and it's just identifying with that and knowing where that comes from.
I mean, for me personally, even though my parents are from Jamaica, my mum's always kind of like, since I was a little girl, she used to sit me in front of the mirror and be like, you're an African. That's who you are. So I grew up always seeing myself as African, African Caribbean. And so when I got to secondary school ages, and I started like hearing people say certain comments like, oh no, I'm not African, they're different to us, or, you know, I want my hair to be like this or whatever. I was just like, what are you not talking about? Because I had never looked at myself or seen myself or even questioned that I didn't belong. And so, you know, I can definitely agree in saying that there has been a shift, there has been a change, but at the same time, yeah, of course it still exists. I just think it's changed form, if anything, you know? So, yeah.
Going back to like the way in the diaspora, because I would say now the term diaspora has got another meaning. Initially, it was the children of Caribbeans or African diaspora. In the Caribbean, people were African diaspora, but now we've got second and third generation continental Africans who are also the diaspora. So that's taken on a new meaning. And it's that those two diasporic groups that have merged the Joke and Jollof together. That group of people, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and it's just like even the fact that we have rice and peas in Jamaica and Awache in Ghana, and it's just, you know, that's something that's stuck through, and not a lot of Caribbeans probably know that, you know, rice and peas is a derivative of Awache from a Ghanaian rice and peas dish as well. So it's just all those things that there's so much more things that unite us than separate us, but we seem to still stay divided because of lack of knowledge of what keeps us connected.
Exactly.
And I think as well, because we're at different stages in our experience, like a lot of my African friends, they're literally first generation here, or they weren't even born here. So they're the same as my mum in terms of they came here when they were 8 or when they were 11. Whereas me, I was born here. So most of them are born in Africa and still have that connection to their roots. So sometimes there's this disconnect because they kind of like would voice that they look at Caribbeans and they're like, but why do you not hold on to your culture as much? Like, why are you not like this? Why, I don't know, do you not greet your elders? Which obviously a lot of us still do, but then there's a lot of us that don't now. Do you know what I mean? So I think that disconnect is why they hold these kind of certain stereotypes about us, like, it forms a bigger bridge between us because they're still very much rooted, and I feel like they're more rooted in their culture than we are.
But isn't that not us greeting our ancestors, our elders before?
Yeah.
Us greeting our elders before. Isn't that more, the fact that we're not doing it as much now, or some of us not doing it as much now, is that more to do with us being more British now as opposed to more Caribbean? I feel like traditional Caribbean upbringing and those who are closely connected to Caribbean upbringing is close to African stuff with terms of greeting the elders and certain customs, whereas the ones that are maybe third, fourth generation British, that British identity, some of those mannerisms and formalities don't exist as much. I think that might be what you're referring to.
Yeah, but that's why, I was saying that obviously we're at different stages in the experience. A lot of them are newer to this. So they still are closer to their culture than we are. We're further down the line away from it. And so I think that difference between us is part of what separates us. You know?
I think even picking up on what you were saying about their first generations, and it's like that means they haven't been exposed to what I call it Negropeanism, innit? Europeanism, but from the black perspective. And it's like being, I call man them Negropeans, it's like there's us, we are not Negropeans, like we are Africans that happen to be in Europe and we're living that experience. But then there's people who will swear blind they're not Africans, they won't come from that culture, maybe their parents or grandparents were even here before, so they was exposed to this culture, and then mixing with people, rubbing shoulders with other cultures every day, it's going to influence how we perceive our own culture. That's a fact. You can't have, because they're your English people, not to disrespect them, but the way that they connect with their like elders is different. Then Chinese people, then we've got Asians, we've got Indians. It's very different. So it's hard to retain that, and then even in just Britain in general, like your elders are not really seen so much as a big thing. Whereas in Africa, we talk about our ancestors, we talk about our elders. Like that's a big thing. We sit at the feet of the elders. Like over here, man, walk past the elders on the road, no business with them. Like, the elder will come and say something to them and say, shut up. Like, so it's very hard when you're dealing with people who are mixed culture, and we've got a very strong influence pushing us the other direction as well.
That makes me think about the double consciousness thing that the boys kind of coined, in terms of us not really being proud of who we are when we come in, being grown up and being brought into this European environment, wanting to have to fit in while still trying to balance our other identities and wanting to be accepted, and often finding ourselves having to adapt or morph or be a chameleon in the workplace, or if we're a minority in a white environment, feeling that kind of conflict or that discomfort, having to adjust how you might speak, how you might come across, all of those kind of things. And it really boils down to us not really owning who we are as well.
I think the reason for that is, the type of environment that we live in there's a big competition because socioeconomic resources are scarce. So I feel as though a lot of third generation Black people, they will try to adopt the same mannerisms as their colonizers because that's what's most desirable in order to get a job. So I think unconsciously they will dissociate themselves from their African counterparts. They won't want to dress the same, won't want to speak the same. A lot of people even change their names. They're not proud to, have the same names as, their parents and, their traditional family names. So I think that's where there's a disconnect.
And also, even just sort of being in the acting field, when I've been in classes and stuff, we do a lot of improvisation and it can go anywhere. And there's been times when I've been in predominantly white class and, the scene might get heated and automatically I'm now in my head because I'm like, oh, wait, there's the Black girl, there she is coming out, because I'm questioning how I'm now being perceived. And obviously you can't have that for acting. With acting, you're supposed to be free. But I feel like that's something that Black actors or creatives have to kind of deal with, and even an extra layer that they have to work against, because we all may be self-conscious to a certain degree, but then now we're dealing with also thinking about how we're being perceived based on our race and based on a whole load of stereotypes that is not our responsibility. So, yeah.
I want to shout out Black parents in the diaspora. I grew up in a household where, like I said, it was a predominantly white town I lived in, north of England. So going to school, going outside, going into town, I'm in British society, and I had to figure out how I'm going to adapt. And as much as I'd like to say I tried to retain my African culture, I was very much influenced by the people around me. I'd speak, obviously, English the whole time. But when I got back home, my mother would quickly remind me that you're no longer out there with your, British friends. You are back in Africa in this house. So, she was a big influence as to me holding on to African culture as much as possible. I still have to look in the mirror and face the fact that I'm in Britain and have been here for a very long time. So I have adopted a lot of, British culture, and I have to deal with that. But there are so many, like you said, your mom telling you that you're a beautiful Black or African, girl. That's really, really powerful. And so, shout out to all the African parents out there who fight really hard to go against the outside influences, and when their children are home, to actually make sure that the culture's still there, that they respect the parent in the home, that they respect their elders in the home. It's not easy, because for me, for example, school acts as another parent to the child. They're there for the majority of the day. They're there for the majority of the week. So other children who are not raised like you're raised will influence your child. You know what I mean? And it is hard to kind of keep that intact.
That's a big point, That's a very big point, because it's I've seen it with my little sister growing up. Now I'm a bit older, I can watch the child growing and their psychology developing. It's when she was just 2, 3, 4 at home, only going when mum lets her go, she had a certain way. Then it's when she goes to school and she sees Barbara over there, no, No, man, listen, she's coming home all of a sudden thinking that's gonna run in the yard. She doesn't know, mom. She don't know our culture. I'm saying, boy, so you're going to see what they're doing, and you're bringing that back. But it just goes to show how easily influenced, especially from those young ages, we can be. And exactly that, it's hard to explain to a child your culture is different from theirs. Even when you see like Indians, like they'll dress up in their nice gowns and to go, but it's like that's their culture. That's what they're doing it. We don't have as much of those kind of things, so it's very hard to differentiate because we've been there since we're in the West. We've helped to kind of shape British culture, so it's like our culture is getting ingrained. Plus, they do the culture vulture thing, so it's getting ingrained, and it's like there's really becoming a thin line between what is Black British culture and what is British culture, because even just words like Wagwan, that's Jamaican, but now it's becoming British culture, like it's slang.
Black British culture. That's
Yeah.
it.
But then now it's becoming, now it's going a step further, because now I'm gonna say, no, you don't have to be black to say Wagwan, and you don't have to be black to say certain things like, man are saying the N-word, man are singing songs, and man saying, why is it wrong for them to say that? Why is it even a debate? Because if I was to come up in here and start saying ni hao, like, man are gonna look at me like I'm weird because I'm busting
That's not
Chinese.
you,
Like,
yeah.
but you're speaking patois, which is Jamaican, it's broken, and no one's questioning you for it. That's just culture.
That
So-
there's a lot of many aspects of our culture, and it's good that you raised the points about the merging of Jamaican and British culture, because I think, do we accept or reject British identity? Because I feel like Black British culture is a whole subculture on its own
Yeah.
that we've also embraced, and even the other elements of other cultures. There are good things in all cultures and bad things in all cultures, and I feel like what we have now today is Black British culture is a merging of Caribbean, African now, because Afrobeats is huge. And then we've got the obviously British, we love fish and chips, the Cockney slang, all these things is shaped Black British culture. So do we embrace it, reject it, pick and choose? I mean, what does it really mean to be Black British? Because technically, even though we identify as, African Caribbean, Angolan, etc., South African, we're all now in Black British culture, identifying with Black British culture. What does it mean how does it feel, what does it mean to really be functioning in this space, this time?
I think, when I was younger, I kind of always used to identify myself as, I'm Jamaican. Sometimes me and my mum would run jokes. She'd be like, you're not Jamaican. Like, you don't know about this, you don't know about that, whatever. But I've kind of grown, and now I see myself almost as displaced, I would say. So I can't reject British culture because it has shaped me. And there are things that I do that my mum will be like, yeah, that's because you've grown here. Do you know what I mean? But then at the same time, I also associate with a lot of the things that my mum has taught me, and I want to hang on to a lot of the things that my mum has taught me. But then I went to Jamaica earlier this year, and I know I'm not Jamaican. They don't look at me as Jamaican. They look at me as English guy, like, foreigner. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that's almost the reason why we've had to kind of create this British subculture. I mean, I feel like it happened naturally anyway.
Yeah.
But also, when you are not kind of accepted anywhere, you kind of then create your own. You take bits from what works for you, and you evolve. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I just think that it's important to hold on to the healthy aspects of the culture that you come from, and to then take the healthy aspects of the culture that you're in and try to make the best of it. That's what I see it.
Well, reject or accept Black British culture. I have to go to Garvey again, my number one role model, because he says it the best, innit? We can't deny that we're British, innit? We can't say I'm not British, but I'm African first. It's like, we seem to forget, like, all right, cool, I can be British, but if they're troubling my sister over there, I need to know, cool, I'm an African as well, and I need to unify with my people then. Because as far as we're talking about English, this and that, we're British, but yeah, you see two Englishmen out there, they will unify quick time on man's clock.
First.
They will unify quick time when there's a problem. And then with us now, it's like, even when I was young, I used to see two black men are fighting, and he's fighting to defend his brethren over there. Not disrespect, not on a racist thing, but it's his white friend, and two black men are there rocking it, cause my man's in a problem with my man, and you don't want to he don't want to speak up to him. And it's like, because us as black men, we got heart, the next brother's so quick to want to jump in and defend it. And it's like, as black people, we're so quick to fight everyone else's battles. We
That's
want
true.
to talk for everyone else's plight. But
Yeah.
when it comes to our thing, no one ain't willing to stand up and unify. So I think we have to come to an understanding, a common understanding that yes, we are black British, but we're African first. We
Yes.
have to know the history of why we're here,
Yeah.
how we got here,
Yeah.
and then go from that place. Instead of, are we African or are we British? You can be both. You can be both. You can't say that I can't be a real African but be British. Man's growing up in Britain.
Yeah.
We are shaping what it means to be British. So being British is getting more African. It's getting more Indian. It's getting more Chinese. How you eating Chinese? That's British culture. You get a little takeaway, a Chinese, get a pizza, that's Italian. It's a multicultural place, but we have to find a place for Africanness. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's what is missing now. We've got the British culture, but then we have to find a dialogue like what we're doing and a common ground so we can say, cool, we're Africans, done and dusted, but we're also an African this. You can be an African British, you can be an African American, you can be an African Chinese.
So to play devil's advocate, I would say that somebody would throw a spanner in the works and say, well, Africa is a continent. There's so many languages, so many cultures. You've got North Africa, East Africa, South Africa, West Africa. How can you say I'm African when Africa itself is so diverse?
I would say that is a very good point, but I just look at it as like Africa is bigger than the continent. Even when people just say it's the continent, to me, Africa is bigger than the continent itself. Africa is the DNA. Like when you talk about a panda or something, take a panda out of China and go put him in England, he's still a panda, but now he's just a panda in a different environment. Like,
Yeah.
we come from the spiritual teachings, I believe in, we come from the land itself. When they say God fashioned man out of clay, the clay was in Africa, it was African clay. So we are Africa, like who set Africa's, like when we talk about the tribes and the pyramids and these things, who built that? It was us, it was our ancestors, like man's great granddads and it, like, it was them, man. So that DNA is still within man. Just because I'm not there now, don't mean that I can't awaken that DNA in myself. Doesn't mean that that's not where we came from. So it's like, it's written in stone now. You're African. Like, they say the oldest woman in the world, Lucy, how are you going to name an African woman Lucy? But Lucy was found and she's got the African DNA. So we are African. Like, everybody's got African DNA in it. Even the English brothers and them, bro, they got African DNA in them. So you can't say we're not African. And what part of Africa? Everyone's different. Africa's big. What do you identify as personally? But that's more to the division concepts. Like, yeah, you can play devil's advocate and want to divide the thing and try to say that, but it's like, what are you doing when you're saying that? Like, where are you going with it? I'm trying to unify people. So we're looking for points to unify around. Like the colonisers and them, they will love that. They're looking for points to divide us around.
Yeah.
Where we're from. But Africa, all the lines when you're talking about Central Africa, that don't exist to me, you know, because man, them came, conference, they divided up Africa. I've been to Africa, there's no lines on it. So there is no Central Africa. That don't exist in our consciousness. That is a construct that has been put there for division, so that man can divide up Africa and say, I'm taking this piece, I'm taking this piece. But Africa's one thing. There's tribes, and you have to know your tribe, and the tribes used to trade. One brother would marry his daughter to this brother's daughter to connect the tribes up. So Africa's one. Africa's 100%. We're African, British.
African British. So it's a new term now.
African first.
British
Yeah.
by force.
Yeah.
That British, African Caribbean, African British Caribbean. We'll mix it up. So what do you think it would take for those continental Africans who say you're African and look at you like you're crazy? What do you think it would take for them to see the connection? Or what is it that's preventing them from seeing the connection? And because we're able to see it, we seem to know and understand and get it.
They don't want to see it. They have to want to see it. Because the connection's there. We don't have to make the connection. Go look at two statues and put man's face next to it. You'll see we look alike. Go to Kemet and look at the temples and they look like us, man. When you talk about Jamaica, where was Nanny from? Like Nanny of the Maroons is a shoot of the Ashanti tribe. She was an Ashanti queen and she went there. If I was a king, if I am a king, and if they take my people then hostage, any good king or warrior, you're gonna have to go get your people back, or you have to try. She went there. She never managed to get back, but she started a new thing and we went off it. So if you want to know, the information is there. We live in the age of information. So ignorance to me is a choice. Like, it's just people want to find a reason. Some people don't want to link up with you. Some people might not like you. Like, they got their own beliefs. I find a lot of people have never met Jamaicans. So a lot of people have never met Angolans. They have never met us, but they want to judge us because of things they see on TV, things they see and hear. They think all Jamaicans is cartel and these things, and we're saying that's not us, you know. This man that I way back. So
And our kids are unruly and all these things. Like, and there's a perception, like in that same conversation I was having in the WhatsApp group about our children have their manners unruly. Smoke. We have to, oh my gosh, this is all dance hall sports. I'm playing dance.
I spoke to them, and when I spoke to South Africans, like my brother saying to me, bro, you know what's mad? Like, my people then, before I come to this country, they told me, like, be careful of Jamaicans. Like, you lot are a bit mad. He's like, man, are cool. Like, now I got to know you. But he's saying, bro, like, people are telling us, like, I'm hearing things like at the airport, they're telling man, like, beware. Like, don't go mix yourself up in inner city. Like, don't connect with these people. So it's a lot of propaganda.
Yes.
It's not like they've sat down with us.
Yeah.
I don't really know many Africans, like, there's ignorant ones, but not many. I sit down with them and reason with them. And it's like, bro, we can reason that. I know your history. Sometimes I know African history better than a man who's born in the land. Like.
100%.
So it's about what you want, what you're willing to search for and accept. Because someone just won't accept it. Look, there's pictures of Black Jesus and these things and writings. And man will say, no, never. But man will believe other things they've never seen. So man believe in the moon and these things, and they believe all these planets that they've never seen them. We see the one moon, that's it. You never see Jupiter. You never did see Saturn, but you believe that. So why can't they believe we're from Africa and we look just like them? We get the same hairstyles. It's a matter of one.
So in terms of the question I asked before, which was, should we embrace or reject British identity in the context of Black British? Because I feel like that's even a separate identity or culture on its own. Does anyone want to add anything to that question in terms of whether we should accept or reject British culture or Black British culture, which is not urban culture? I hate that word, by the way. That's another conversation.
That's another topic, yeah.
It's trying to gentrify culture, vulture.
Does the word
all
come
that thing.
from us? That's the
Exactly,
question.
it's not from us. It's not from us. But yeah, does anyone want to add anything in regards to rejecting? Because I actually do like, I'm quite fond of Black British culture.
Okay.
Many aspects of it. So I wouldn't reject it because I feel like it's still a lot of it is us. You know, like I said before, a lot of us have interjected our African culture and our Jamaican culture, our jerk and our jollof, our Afro beats, our dancehall, our reggae. If you listen to Afro beats, it's patois. It's got a lot of, Jamaican influence, and just like our reggae music came from the continent.
Yeah.
So it's like now it's just like a symbiotic kind of union happening. And then and we all live in the UK, and that's kind of like influenced us as well. So that's my perspective on it. I don't know if anybody else had anything else to add to that question.
I mean, my question is, what would it mean to embody African culture? You have to come to an understanding of what does culture mean, because it's like, for instance, we can't. Before we say that we're going to reject British culture, we have to come to an understanding of what is culture, what behaviors are African, and what would I guess support connectivity, or what would support people coming together. It's not a matter of just saying, okay, I'm aware dashiki and now I'm African, or I'm going to start speaking a certain way, or just adopting external mannerisms. But what is it about African culture that has to be embodied before we can say we are African? Is it understanding the principles of vibration? Is it understanding principles of rhythm? Those kind of things that came naturally to the African. So it's not just about copying how people dress, because I see a lot of that, and I reject that as well.
Yeah.
I don't like people just wearing a dashiki and wearing stuff and just saying, yeah, I'm African now. That's very fake to me, because we can't connect. There are certain people I can connect with. That's what being African is. When you can connect with someone just off, you know what I'm saying, spotting them, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Connectivity.
Yeah.
Not him wearing a dashiki. Or him just, what I'm trying to say. So we have to understand what is culture. It's not just those external things.
Yeah.
So I think
Culture is attitudes, values, and goals, isn't it?
Exactly.
And that's shared by a particular group.
Exactly.
A value system that kind of holds you accountable. Like if you kind of divert from that, there's kind of consequences, or if you fit into it, you're celebrated, or you can progress through that group or culture. So
100%. And we haven't come to a consensus about,
exactly.
what values do we represent as a one nation, as Africans.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying, because
You have to look at it like, you see culture, because a lot of people look at it like, now we're so far into history and into time where a lot of people don't have the understanding of what came before us. These things, culture, like our habits and stuff, it comes out of life itself, innit? When you really take it down to the bottom line, it's like a certain man got igloos and them things because they live in the ice. Certain people, their hair is long enough because they need that to protect their neck. Certain people, we wear things and get up the car. It's the way of the land. Certain food you eat because you can't just before, like in this era, the world's never been like this. People don't seem to put this into the context when they look at history and look at culture. The world ain't been, I can just order something from China now. I can go online and chat to a man in China now. Back in the day, if I wanted to go to China, you have to go down the Silk Road. You have to take country to country. So food, what you eat, where it comes from. Like if in China, they got loads of different like blossoms and everything. So you're gonna see that. You're gonna see instruments made out of that. You're gonna see those kind of decors. In Africa now, depending on where you are, northern, you get more desert kind of things because that's the environment. So a lot of people's cultures really came from the environments in which they was in and the habits and way of living that they had to carry out to survive. But now it's like, as you said, people can now teeth a man's culture just because you think it look nice. You put on a dash, I'm African. It's like, but no, that's not what it
that's
means.
exactly what I was saying about the continent being so diverse. Just what you described. North Africa is desert. South Africa is a completely different environment, and it shapes your identity and your culture. So it's like, how can you say we're African now, and then pick and choose which part and say this is what it is when it's so diverse.
And then based on that argument, it kind of, then you can understand maybe why Africans don't see us as the same as them. Because it isn't just about the fact that we look like them, but the way we behave straight away, they can sense that difference. Because at the same time, I've got uncles and aunties who have gone out to Ghana and to Nigeria and been accepted in their families, given names, done ceremonies, and are welcomed over and over again. But that's because they have that connection that you're talking about. So if it works for some, it can work for others. But what is it that makes us connect? It's not the external.
No, it's not. Exactly.
Us as a people, what we need to start doing is taking back our power, because it's like, why are we allowing other cultures to influence our decisions? We need to have our own little Black Congress. Like we need to have our own little thing where it's like, you can call us this. You should be able to account for this. What is Black culture? We decide. What are Black words? We decide. We shouldn't have it as man saying that's Black culture, urban. Man are putting labels on our thing, and it's like, why are we accepting the labels that are then being put on us? Because if we don't like it, like woke, we should bun the woke thing. Like we're not all awake. Like there's people who are awake and they're woke and they do stupidness. Like these things, like we love to run with it. Anytime someone tries to glamorize our culture, it's like there's a thing. Even like any show, the one guy who's the closest to the Black guy, like we're rooting for him. Like no, we need to cut all of that out. If we must stand by ourselves, then we must learn to do that. Stand by ourselves, and that's it. If that's not Black, that's not Black. Like, we don't accept it. We decide what it means to be African. We have Africans from the diaspora, we have Africans from the motherland, we have British Africans, and we then come to that. We write our own thing, because that's what Garvey and them was doing. When people talk about like Malcolm X and them, people look at it like, oh, it's just the debates, just the chatting and that, like the glamorized side. But that's not what they was doing. They was redefining themselves. Like the Panthers and that. We was doing for self. That's what it came to. Now it's like, we're just doing for image. Being woke is now coming like a mega church now. Man are doing this woke thing because it's in now. It's a fashion to be conscious. It's a fashion. Whereas it's a lifestyle. And we are trying to literally define our lifestyle. Like every word we use comes from a book, the dictionary. Who wrote the book? That book there is defining what you believe words mean. We need a Black dictionary, like literally a dictionary of our experience, how to define those things. When someone's dealing with you away and you feel like it's because of your culture, like there should be something we call that. He's trying to do it, man. It's a section 22, my brother. We know. Okay, he's trying to blackball my man.
And that's how a lot of the cultures kind of develops the strong culture, I'll say like the Jewish culture, the Arabic culture, they document things and they have like a code of conduct
For
that you can
themselves.
refer back to.
Yes.
And based on what you said about, culture really being born out of the environment that you're in at the time, would it be fair to say then that we're a new culture,
Yes,
a new nation
African.
of Africans and Caribbeans and in Britain, and we're a separate, unique group of our own, with our own set of cultures and cultural norms, and that is still under development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then under that token, it's okay to kind of, not that it's what we want, but then it's okay to not be accepted by Africans as the traditional view of Africans, because we know that we are not that. We are different. As much as we kind of wish, or we might want or yearn for that connection and yearn to be that and have had that, we don't. That's the reality. We don't. We are what we are. So.
If I can interject though, I mean, I guess this new age thing of trying to save the African, but I would like to pose a question. What did the Africans identify themselves as? Do you think they were saying, I'm African, before the colonizers came and then put that word in there? Were they saying, I'm African, or were they saying, I'm a cosmic being?
Well, even now, they're still not saying that African. They'll say, I'm Yoruba, I'm Igbo.
So,
they still identify with their tribes.
But what did those tribes identify themselves as? I think there's been so much definitions and divisions now that we've fragmented ourselves from the entirety of this cosmos. You got to understand that the Africans back then, they weren't concerned what was happening on Earth and what we define ourselves on Earth as. They were concerned about the stars and mapping out different star systems. So when we talk about identity, the first thing that's required, and this is just my personal belief, is identity of self. God's self, Godhood. You know what I mean? So that when I look at my brother, I look at him as God, Goddess, God. I won't say he's African, he's this or that. We have to think higher than what the system kind of labels us as. I mean, I think that's why Afrocentrism is coming back, but we have to think bigger than that.
Yeah.
That's my personal belief. Because we're not trying to go back to that. You know what I'm trying to say? We have to think bigger, but that's my personal thing. So with identity, the first thing that's required is knowledge of self.
I think knowledge of self comes from an understanding of your history and where you come from.
100%.
And we just don't look back further
Understand
enough.
culture,
Yeah.
look back to go forward. There's nothing wrong with looking back at Garvey to go forward and continue to mold what we're currently in. I feel like it's currently defining itself. It's still changing, it's still new. 5, 6, 7 years ago, the influence of Afrobeats and Africans from the continent wasn't as strong as it is now, and who knows what's going to happen in the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's still shaping itself.
And I think that,
Sorry, go on.
oh, sorry, I just want to say, and I think that the reason why, like what you're saying is right, I agree with you. But then on the other side, I think the reason why we do that is because there's so many different issues going on so many different levels that we kind of adjust to that level in order to try and solve the issue. For example, we've got a lot of young people going around and committing crimes. And back in the olden days, a lot of grown people would intervene. They would say, stop, that's the way. It was a community. The elders were responsible for children, even if they weren't their own children. Whereas now, they're scared to intervene. Now, that's something that you would say was a cultural thing. That's something that you'd say is a part of the African culture, where the elders take care of the wider community. And so when we're now looking at trying to solve that problem, we're saying, what's changed? Oh, okay, we're no longer doing that from that culture. And so we start to think on that level again because we're trying to solve that problem on that level. And so it's like the saying, isn't it? It's like, how do you, well, there's the argument that you can't solve the problem from the same level that it was created. But then at the same time, it's kind of hard to kind of just go all the way up and ignore the racial or the racial issues or definitions because they do still have a part to play. I mean, the culture does have a part to play. So,
What would you say to somebody who would say those in the diaspora who are not from the continent trying to claim Africanness as having an identity issue? because that's something that I've heard flying around on, it's an identity crisis and you've got issues with identity. What would you say to someone who says that?
I agree with that. I agree with that. But that's like saying if a man's got a broken arm, you say to him, you've got a health issue. It's like, is there a problem? Like, it's not a problem that we got an identity issue. Man just got taken under my arm for 400 years from here to there to there. And then you think we're saying? If you think like man are saying now, you need to read Dr. Amos. Because right now we have a mental problem that is going through our people. But the first way to healing is accepting it. We have to accept we have a mental problem. As black people right now, we got post-traumatic slave disorder. We got some things and some ways that are in us that they're not healthy or productive. Man want to go out and rave it off, but man don't want to go to the seminar learning about economics. Like, I'm not saying not to go out and rave it off, but I'm saying have the balance. The same energy you're willing to go put in to enjoy yourself, leisure, go put that in to progress yourself. Like, go put that same effort that you would go to school and do the work. That's what I used to say to my brethren. Like, you see when Miss gives us an assignment, why are you there putting in mad work, uni and that? But then when we go home, I'm saying, come, let's go watch 2 Dr. Amos and them man there, 2 Dr. Delbert and that. Man, I'm saying, where's like, I'm saying, but you just want to learn what they're telling you. You don't want to learn what you need to know to progress yourself.
Your own self, exactly.
I just like, we do have an identity issue because we don't know ourselves anymore. And unless you can accept that and be willing to then learn, you're going to have an identity issue. And you can delude yourself, you can have an issue and walk around like, no, I don't have an issue, but that's only going to hurt you and your people then in the long run.
Do you think those people who are saying, I'm not African, I'm Trinidadian, I'm British, have an identity issue too?
They have an identity issue, but they even lack an understanding of certain things. Because they might not know that their ancestors come from certain tribes and these things. They might have just know that their mum and dad come from Trinidad and they're in Europe, they're in the UK, and that's it. Like, some people haven't, because at the end of the day, when you like do things, you tend to look at the world like everyone sees it from your eyes. Because I see, I just assume that people know. And when I'm chatting certain things that I learned years ago to a brother, man saying, nah, I'm thinking, bro, you didn't know that, bro. Like, but I was born in a conscious house. Like, my dad was telling me these things when I was little. I just said that my parents were saying, you're beautiful, like, you're black, like, love your melanin. Like, you know, melanin is a good chemical and it's got knowledge and these things there. And it's a neurotransmitter. It's a cosmic chemical. If the sun makes man black, brown, the sun is not on Earth. So where are we getting this melanin? We're connected with things in the cosmos. And that. But I can make that connection. Certain man will look at me like, what do you mean we're connected with the stars? I'm saying, well, right, you get darker from the sun ain't on the Earth. So that's a chemical that is going through space to lick man. You can't see the connection, but it's not common knowledge. And even nowadays, as we've got TVs and internet, these things to us might even be common because we go to Got Kush. Make sure you're subscribed. We go to Got Kush and get the info. They don't go to Got Kush. They man go to I'm a Celebrity and BBC Islander and that. So it's like, it's what's in your sphere of awareness.
I mean, so would you say that people are aware of how bad the state of things are? Or do you think people are comfortable? I think people are very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
People,
too comfortable.
I think it's easier to just not think about those things because once you go down that rabbit hole, it's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot. Once you know what you don't know, there's still so much more you don't know. But it opens Pandora's box. And I think what King Wiz said about the post-traumatic slave disorder, a lot of that is the stereotypes that manifest all those things. And I think since you grew up, you wasn't raised in London, so you might not have been exposed to some of the things that do happen within inner city London. But then again, those are the manifestations of the environment and a mindset that is become toxic.
I would say that even Africans in the continent have a massive identity issue because we suffer from ignorance and sometimes willful ignorance. We don't know our history, and if you don't know your history, you don't know who you are. If we still adhere to the labels, like you said, given by European colonizers who divided Africa and who gave us names for our own spaces and nations and so
even what you name your children, giving your children British names.
Exactly.
Or French names.
No, I just mean also just the continent in terms of South Africa, for example, wasn't called South Africa before,
The Zulu Nation and everything.
Yeah, Azania, when looking into the research, is a name that came up for South Africa. But that's when I took the initiative to say, okay, I wonder what, asking questions. And people don't do that. Like you said, people are comfortable where we are. We're comfortable being given labels by people outside of us, by Western civilization. And that's where we are. That's where the majority of us are. And that's why the identity crisis in the continent, in the diaspora, manifests. Because not only do we not know, but the majority of us don't want to. And I think that's the space we're in right now.
Sometimes it's made easier even to not know.
Yeah.
Like Garvey said again, he said, I could have been a rich man, I'm very smart. But I
yeah.
chose to struggle. It's
It's
like, you know, in these things, like you
yeah.
could have your hair like this, or you can get a weave, you can get a wig. Know that you go to work and there'll be no stress. Or you can take your lovely hair like this, go look at African, but now you're gonna get to, you might get to your comment, you might not even get the job. It's like, what path are you gonna take? These decisions influence your everyday
That double
life.
consciousness again.
Yeah.
I think
Another
even
part,
us
it's
being African, Caribbean and British, it's a triple consciousness, not even a double consciousness. It's a triple consciousness because as a Pan-African woman, I identify strongly with being African from the continent, as in my ancestors are from the continent, and I strongly identify with that.
Yeah.
But I also identify with the fact that
Jamaican.
Caribbean, I'm Jamaican, and that's hugely influenced the way I talk, the food I eat, the way I cook, the way I interact with my family and my friends. And then at the same time, born and raised in South London. And that's also a huge part of my identity. And then when I go into a corporate, when I go to work and I'm in a corporate space,
Yeah.
I then have to adjust.
Next
Accordingly.
identity.
So I can't flex at
No,
work,
you can't.
I flex with my friends
No.
or with my family because then I'm just gonna kiss teeth. If I did kiss my teeth, I probably get away with it, no women. But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm just like,
you can't.
Certain
and then because of the stereotypes that are attached to blackness or black culture or black mannerisms, if you're in a meeting and you did something black, you're automatically going to be labelled negatively,
Yeah.
or it's going to be perceived negatively,
Yes.
and stuff like that. And you have to be mindful of how you show up and present yourself, all your hair,
Yes.
all the time. And that's goes beyond what the original double consciousness term addresses, and probably a quadruple consciousness even. So, yeah.
And I wanted to pick up off your point. I think the reason why we've become too comfortable is because we have to look at where most of the funding goes. You have to realize that truth isn't, you're not paid for telling the truth.
Yeah.
So, you look at Black culture now, we're dominating sports, we're dominating music. We have to understand that the white people also, they're pushing more money there. So are they trying to keep us trapped in these, lower forms of, no, I wouldn't say lower forms, but less noble? Because we look at what Garvey was trying to do. He wasn't looking at those kind of things. He was looking at unifying people. And I understand that sports and music do bring people together, but we have to understand that the mission is much bigger than that. We can't get caught up in trying to have what they have. I mean, it looks nice. It looks nice having Black representation. It looks nice having our own superheroes in a movie.
Yeah.
But I see people get caught up in debates like, oh, why don't we have a Black Superman? I think why is your energy going there? You understand what I mean? They're missing the point. Why is your energy going there? It's so much bigger than that.
So much.
It's so much bigger than that. People need to be educated. Like, why is no one arguing about why Black schools aren't getting funded and certain things aren't getting funded, but we're worried about having a Black Superman?
Yeah.
Is it that necessary? Do you know what I mean? So I think we really need to we need to look at the issue more deeply.
check our priorities.
Yeah, check our priorities, 100%.
And agree on what it's going to be so that we can focus on it and make something happen, because we can have these conversations for the next 10, 15, 20 years. But what's really going to change if we don't start doing what Garvey is, implementing an actual plan that we're going to act on?
Exactly.
So,
But the problem, you see, when you say that, the problem is like, even Garvey come to Britain. Garvey was in America. Like, he never used to say that man ain't American, not Jamaican, but he's from Africa. But it's like, at the end of the day, you see, that's comfort. People have to really be willing to sacrifice this. You see these things that we believe is necessities. Like I've been arrested, and I don't know if you've been arrested. And that. You see when you get arrested, yeah, and you come out of the cell, yeah. Trust me. Listen. You see the things that you thought were your priorities. They're not your priorities. You realize. You see, just turn on the tap, turn it off. Man, turn it on a good 5 times. Priorities are different, you know. You see when you go to Jamaica and you ain't got no toilet, and then you have to go pit toilet up there, like just the shower. Certain things that are priorities, we've been made. Like, because we've grown up in such a way where these things are just there.
Available,
it's like you no longer associate with priority. You just see it as like, you think that, my mum used to say to me, you have too much privileges. You don't realize that these are privileges, you know? But they are. These things that we believe are necessities, they're not necessities. I'm not talking about phone, Netflix, Wi-Fi, then the foolishness there. You see, when you go to the motherland in certain places there, they've even brought it over there, but how much people really know how to get water? Purify your water. How much man how to grow a food?
Yeah.
So what if the electric was to cut off tomorrow? You think you're gonna be worrying about Wi-Fi?
Exactly.
You think you're gonna be worrying about them things? You're gonna be worrying about food. You know, you're worrying about the basics of survival. And it's like we're too comfortable in this bubble.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is we don't even create the bubble. How much of us own a company that make Wi-Fi? How much of us own a company that make phone?
No.
None of us. So we're talking about, oh, we don't like these people, this and that. But you're living a reality that they are governing. You can't live at this level like this if it was all black. I'm fine with the place.
And this is what I'm saying about, you know, other cultures and there being some positive things for other cultures, like the Japanese, I think it's a corrective business model that they have. It's a cultural business model. And the Jewish people, they have a cultural business model. Indians, again, they have a culture that fosters business. And I feel like until we can have a culture that is going to progress us, and that's something that we're all in agreement on, it's like we can say, oh, we're African and we're Caribbean, we're British and all those things. But what does it really mean and what is it really doing for us?
There's more power behind
You know what I mean?
behind the chat.
So it's like, I don't, we can say, you know, other cultures are influencing this or colonizer this and that and the other. But at the same time, what is it about that culture that enabled them to go and take over the whole entire world? You know, what kind of mindset does it take? You know what I mean? And it's all those kind of things. So I feel like we can isolate ourselves and say, yeah, this is who we are. But at the same time, the world is so much bigger. And I feel like you need to know who your enemy is, back to front, in and out. And you need to know who your comrades are as well, you know? Thank you for tuning into this episode of Decipher. This is Semicircle. You, the audience, complete the circle. So please comment, like, subscribe, join in the conversation. You ain't got nothing if you ain't got kush.